lot of you. So that is going to be, if you ended with some more bacteria, you could possibly end up dead by the end of it. Your bacteria could keep producing, and we did it wrong. We didn't take our antibiotics. So that is something, that first activity, we looked at the evolution of the bacteria based on your human influence. So based on the fact if you did or did not take your antibiotics on time, that is your human influence on the evolution, the change over time. Now, if we're looking forward in this activity, you will use a model to explore how an environment that includes predators affects the survival of individuals of an imaginary species, our toothpick worms. So we're going to be looking at our toothpick worms today. We'll have two colors, which I'll get into. But now today, we're going to be looking at evolution, or that change over time based on our environment, based on what's around us. And we're going to be simulating as if you were the birds, if you were the finches, and you were eating all of your worms, which worms would you eat? And which worms would survive a little bit more? So that evolution with your environment. So we'll focus on the differences in just one feature today, the color of the worm. So as mentioned, we'll have green worms and we will have beige worms that we are working with. And these versions of the feature, such as the color, are called traits. So later on in our lesson, we'll go back and do some vocabulary words. Your traits is going to be one vocab word that we're looking at. So traits are similar, like we mentioned, such as color of your eyes, color of your hair, if you have a widow's peak or not. Maybe one of your siblings does, maybe you do. That is a specific trait. So differences in these traits are called variations. So the green versus the beige, those are your variations of traits that we are looking at today. So as you see, if you have your books open, I can't really show it all, but something we're going to be looking at is the camouflage of our organisms and seeing how does that help our organism. Does it give them an advantage? Does it give them a disadvantage? And analyzing that process of it also. Let's see our leopard, we see our fish, and we see our moth over there, just barely seeing it to try to protect them from the predators. So that's a little background. They're trying to blend in with their environment in order to survive and reproduce, creating babies, creating offspring. Also a portion of our activity that we are going to be looking at is who is surviving, who is continuing to produce more of itself. So if we flip our page now to A8, we can see our material. So I'm going to show you guys all of that and I'm going to walk you through how the beginning part looks. Look at it all. Nice. Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So today, everyone's going to, when we get going, you're going to be working in your table groups, group of 4. And, or if you have 3, there's various ways to do this. We'll explain that to you. But each table group is going to come up, get a basket, and you'll have your green grass pad. That's going to be your environment. That is where all of your worms are living today. And that is going to be in the middle of the 4 of you. So where your books typically are, that's where you're going to place your green patch. You also will have a baggie, which simulates the belly of the birds. So you'll see all your remaining worms in there. I'll get to that one. And you'll have 2 bags of worms. One is just your regular worms, and one is your reserve worms. So we'll get to how we're going to be using those. But if you can read in our step 2, so of the procedure, step 1 says to label the bags. You won't need to today because they are labeled worms and reserve worms already. So we took that task away from you guys. And so we're going to start at procedure number 2. So these are all your worms today. Your worms are green and they are beige. So our two different variations of worms, like I said, are green and beige. You are going to start with 25 worms of each. So 25 green, 25 beige, that's your starting population, as you can see on our procedures. So we're going to count out 25 worms of green, and then we're going to count out 25 worms of beige. So just imagining that group right there is 25 and 25, just because I don't want to get out all 25 and 25. So this is our group of 25, 25. The rest, those are your reserve worms, which you can either put back in your bag or just hold them aside on your table. So your first step, after you count out your 25 and 25, you're going to put all of those worms, your starting population, back in your worm bag. Make sure if any of them fall, you pick them back up. You shake up your bag. You're getting a nice wide spread of your worms, so they're spread out when you pour them back out. So now that is going to be your initial population of that 25, but now they're mixed up. So let's keep reading. So now there's 25 of each on your plot of land in your environment, and it's feeding time. You all are birds. You're hungry. It's feeding time. You want to eat 10 of your worms. You're each totaling 40 worms eaten. So depending on your table group, we'll tell you how many to do. My recommendation, if you're in a group of 4, is to each eat 10 worms. So meaning, if I was to eat 10 worms, take some away, by the end of it, I should have 10 worms left. So let's just say this was our population. We ended with 6 and 4 after our first feed. So I'm going to bring in our student sheet, which you all got in this class and glued in. And as you notice on our initial population, it already says 25 and 25 for you. So that was the initial population that we put in our bag already. We shook it up and we poured it back out. And then it was feeding time. You all ate. And now there are surviving adults, as you can see on line 2 of your student sheet. Surviving adults are the remaining 10 after you've eaten 40 worms within your group. So on that one, after your first feeding time, you would come over to your student sheet and you would write in your surviving adults. So for green, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'd write in our 6 surviving adults for green. And for beige, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 of your beige. And also, if at any point you forget what I have gone over, all of this is in your procedures step by step. And on your student sheet, there are guidelines on what to do next. So now, if we had our surviving adults, you proceed to line number 3. Now the surviving adults, they're going to create offspring. They're going to have babies. So they're going to multiply. There's going to be more of that specific variation of worm. So for your green worms, there were 6 surviving adults. If you read line 3, it says multiply that number by 4 in order to get your offspring, your number of offspring. So if we were to multiply 6 times 4, we get 24. And we do the same thing with our beige worms. 4 times 4 is going to be 16. That's how many offspring you have gotten out of your surviving adults. At 24 and 16. Now, if you continue to line number 4, it says, what is your total number of survivors and offspring? So it gives you that tip to add up rows 2 and 3. So now we're going to add up our 6 and our 24, which equals 30, and our 16 and our 4, which equals 20. So that is going to be the number of worms that you have at the end of your initial population, initial generation, and